What happens when one of the most watched interviews of the year goes from polite conversation to complete chaos in front of millions of viewers? In just 38 seconds, a single comment turned a primetime television event into an absolute disaster that nobody saw coming. Anderson Cooper sat across from Meghan Markle in the studio, the lights bright and cameras rolling. This was supposed to be a straightforward interview about her recent charity work and life after stepping back from royal duties. The audience was expecting grace, poise, and perhaps a few heartfelt moments. What they got instead was something entirely different. "So Meghan, thank you for being here tonight," Anderson began, his voice warm and welcoming as always. "I know our viewers are excited to hear about the new initiatives you've been working on." Meghan smiled, crossing her legs and adjusting herself in the chair. "Well, Anderson, I appreciate you having me, though I have to say I expected a bit more than this standard setup. I've done interviews in much nicer studios." Anderson's smile didn't waver, though there was a brief pause. "We're grateful you're here. Let's start with your charity work. Can you tell us about the projects you've been focusing on?" "Before we get into that," Meghan interrupted, waving her hand dismissively, "can we talk about the questions you sent over beforehand? Some of them were, quite frankly, beneath me. I'm not here to discuss trivial matters." The studio audience shifted uncomfortably. Anderson maintained his professional composure. "I apologize if any questions seemed inappropriate. We tried to cover topics we thought viewers would find interesting. What would you prefer to discuss?" "That's the problem, isn't it?" Meghan leaned forward, her voice taking on an edge. "You think you know what people want to hear. But do you really? I mean, how long have you been doing this? Because it shows." Anderson blinked, clearly taken aback but recovering. Quickly, "I've been in journalism for over 30 years, but this interview is about you, not me. Let's refocus. Your foundation recently announced a new program for underprivileged youth. Can you tell us about that?" 30 years, Meghan repeated, ignoring his question entirely. 30 years, and this is the best you can do? These basic questions? I expected better from someone with your reputation. Then again, maybe that reputation is a bit inflated." The audience gasped quietly. Anderson sat up straighter, his professional mask beginning to show cracks. "Meghan, I'm not sure what you're hoping to achieve here, but we invited you to share your story and your work. If you'd rather not do that, we can certainly end this conversation." "Oh, so now you're threatening me?" Meghan's voice rose slightly. "Typical. A woman speaks her mind, and suddenly she's the problem. This is exactly what I've dealt with my entire life. People like you, Anderson, who think they can control the narrative." "I'm not threatening anyone," Anderson replied, his voice calm but firm. "I'm simply stating that this interview has a purpose, and if you're not interested in having a productive conversation, then perhaps we should reconsider." "Productive?" Meghan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want to talk about productive? Let's talk about how you've built your career on the backs of people's trauma. You sit here in your comfortable chair, asking invasive questions, and then you go home to your privileged life while the rest of us deal with the consequences of your so-called journalism." The audience was silent now, the tension in the room thick enough to cut. Anderson's jaw tightened. "Meghan, I've always treated my guests with respect. I've given you a platform here tonight to share whatever you'd like, but you've spent the last several minutes attacking me personally instead of engaging in the conversation we agreed to have." "Agreed to have?" Meghan's voice dripped with sarcasm. "I didn't agree to be talked down to by someone who thinks he's better than everyone else. You know what your problem is, Anderson? You're so used to people bowing down to you, thanking you for the opportunity to be on your show, that you can't handle it when someone actually challenges you." "I welcome challenges," Anderson responded, his voice steady despite the increasingly hostile atmosphere. "What I don't welcome is disrespect, not just to me, but to my team who worked hard to make this interview happen, and to the viewers who tuned in tonight expecting a meaningful conversation." Meghan stood up abruptly, her microphone still attached. Disrespect? You want to talk about disrespect? How about the fact that you're sitting there, judging me, when you have no idea what I've been through? No idea what it's like to have the entire world picking apart every single thing you do? Actually, I do know what that's like, Anderson said quietly, remaining seated. I've been in the public eye for decades. I've been criticized, attacked, and judged, but I've never used that as an excuse to treat others poorly. Oh, please, Meghan shot back, her voice getting louder. Don't compare your experience to mine. You're a white man in America. You have no concept of the struggles I've faced. Anderson took a deep breath. You're right that our experiences are different. But this isn't about comparing struggles. This is about having a respectful dialogue, something you seem unwilling or unable to do. Unwilling? Meghan's eyes flashed. I'm unwilling to sit here and be condescended to by someone who clearly has an agenda. You brought me here to make me look bad, didn't you? That was the plan all along. That's absolutely not true, Anderson replied, his voice firm. We invited you here in good faith. Every question I've asked has been fair and relevant. You're the one who's turned this into something hostile. Fair? Meghan laughed again, that same bitter sound. Nothing about this is fair. The lighting is terrible, by the way. Did you set it up this way on purpose? To make me look bad on camera? One of the producers off camera shifted nervously. Anderson glanced briefly at the crew before returning his attention to Meghan. The lighting is the same as it is for every guest. I'm sitting under the same lights you are. But it affects me differently, Meghan insisted. You don't understand that because you don't have to think about these things. Everything is just handed to you. Meghan, Anderson said, his patience clearly wearing thin, I've worked extremely hard for everything I have. I didn't have anything handed to me, and I certainly didn't invite you here to argue about lighting or to be accused of having some nefarious agenda. Then why did you invite me here? Meghan challenged, her arms crossed. To boost your ratings? To get people talking? Well, congratulations, Anderson. You've succeeded. This will definitely be talked about. I invited you here, Anderson said slowly, carefully, because I thought you had important things to say. I thought you wanted to use this platform to talk about your work, your experiences, and the causes you care about. Was I wrong? Meghan stared at him for a long moment. You know what? Yes. You were wrong. You were wrong to think I would just sit here and play along with whatever narrative you wanted to create. I'm not one of your puppets. I've never asked you to be a puppet, Anderson replied, his voice rising slightly for the first time. I've asked you basic questions that any journalist would ask. Questions that you agreed to when you accepted this invitation. If you don't want to answer them, that's your choice. But don't attack me for doing my job. Your job, Meghan repeated mockingly. Your job is to tear people down, to make them uncomfortable, to get them to say things they'll regret. Well, I won't give you that satisfaction. Actually, Anderson said, standing up now as well, my job is to have honest conversations, to ask questions that matter, to give people like you a voice. But you have to actually want to use that voice for something other than attacking the person trying to help you. Help me? Meghan's voice went up an octave. You're not helping me. You've been trying to trap me from the beginning. All those questions about my family, about my past, about my decisions. You're just like everyone else. You want to see me fail. That's not true, and you know it, Anderson said firmly. Every question I asked was cleared by your team beforehand. There were no surprises, no traps. Just standard interview questions that you, for some reason, have decided to take as personal attacks. Because they are personal attacks, Meghan shouted. Everything is a personal attack when you're in my position, when you've been through what I've been through. But you wouldn't understand that because you live in your ivory tower, looking down on the rest of us. The audience was completely silent. Some people had their hands over their mouths. Others were staring in disbelief. This was unlike anything they'd ever seen on the show. Anderson closed his eyes briefly, composing himself. Meghan, I think we need to take a break. Clearly this isn't working. We can either regroup and try to have a civil conversation, or we can end this now. Oh, so now you want to take a break? Meghan said sarcastically. Now that I've called you out on your behavior? How convenient. Let me guess. You'll go back there, talk to your producers, and come up with a new strategy to make me look bad. That's not what's happening here, Anderson said, his voice tight with controlled frustration. What's happening here is that you came on this show with an agenda of your own. An agenda to be difficult, to be confrontational, and to create drama. And I'm not going to participate in that. I have an agenda. Meghan's voice was incredulous. That's rich coming from you. You're the one with the clipboard full of questions designed to embarrass me. You're the one who set up this whole charade. These questions, Anderson held up his notes, are the same questions your publicist approved. The same questions we've asked dozens of guests before you. There's nothing unusual or inappropriate about any of them. The only unusual thing here is your reaction to them. My reaction, Meghan said slowly, is completely justified. I'm tired of people like you thinking you can treat me however you want just because I agreed to be on your show. I have value. I have worth. And I deserve better than this. You're absolutely right, Anderson agreed, surprising her. You do have value. You do have worth. And you do deserve better. But you're not getting poor treatment here. You're getting the same respectful treatment we give every single guest. The difference is that you're choosing to see it as something else. Don't tell me what I'm choosing to see, Meghan snapped. You don't get to tell me how to interpret your behavior. I know what I'm experiencing. I know what this feels like. Then tell me, Anderson said, spreading his hands. Explain to me what you're experiencing. Because from where I'm sitting, I've been nothing but professional and courteous, and you've responded with hostility from the moment we started. Meghan was quiet for a moment, and for a second it seemed like she might actually engage. But then her expression hardened again. You really don't get it, do you? This whole thing, this whole setup, it's designed to make people like me look unstable, look difficult, look like the problem. People like you? Anderson asked. What does that mean? You know exactly what that means, Meghan said accusingly. Don't play dumb. It doesn't suit you. Anderson shook his head. I genuinely don't know what you're referring to. I've treated you exactly the way I treat every guest, with respect, with professionalism, and with genuine interest in what you have to say. If you have something to say, say it. That's why you're here. I'm here, Meghan said, her voice cold now, because my publicist thought it would be good for my image. But clearly that was a mistake. This whole thing has been a mistake. If you feel that way, Anderson said calmly, then perhaps we should end this. There's no point in continuing if you're not willing to have an actual conversation. There you go again, Meghan accused. Trying to kick me off your show because I won't play along. Because I won't be the nice, compliant guest who just smiles and nods at everything you say. I'm not trying to kick you off, Anderson said, his patience clearly at its absolute limit. I'm trying to give you an out, because this is clearly not going the way either of us hoped, and continuing seems pointless and unproductive for everyone involved. An out? Meghan laughed harshly. You mean you want me to leave so you can tell everyone I stormed off? So you can paint me as the unstable one who couldn't handle a simple interview? I see what you're doing. What I'm doing, Anderson said, his voice hard now, is trying to salvage something from this disaster. But you're right about one thing. This can't continue. We can't have a productive interview if you're going to attack me and my integrity at every turn. Your integrity? Meghan scoffed. Please, you sold your integrity years ago for ratings and fame. Don't stand there and pretend you're some paragon of journalistic virtue. That was the final straw. Anderson's expression shifted from frustrated patience to genuine anger. Meghan, I've been more than patient with you. I've tried to give you every opportunity to make this work, but I'm done. I'm not going to stand here and let you insult me, my career, and my character on my own show. Oh, so now you're going to throw me out? Meghan said triumphantly, as if she'd been waiting for this moment. Perfect. This is exactly what I knew would happen. The powerful man silencing the woman who dares to speak up. That's not what's happening, Anderson said firmly. What's happening is that you've been disrespectful and hostile from the beginning, and I'm ending an interview that should never have started in the first place. This has nothing to do with silencing anyone. It has everything to do with basic human decency, which you seem to have left at the door. Basic human decency? Meghan's voice rose to a near shout. You want to talk about basic human decency? How about the decency to treat your guests with respect? How about the decency to not set people up to fail? I have treated you with respect. Anderson's voice finally rose to match hers. I have done everything possible to make this interview work, but you don't want it to work. You want conflict. You want drama. And I'm not going to give you that platform anymore. Meghan ripped off her microphone, the sound creating a sharp feedback noise through the studio. Fine. I don't need your platform anyway. I don't need you. You're just another person trying to tear me down, and I won't stand for it. No one is trying to tear you down, Anderson said, his voice returning to a controlled level. But you're doing a pretty good job of that yourself. This behavior, these accusations, this entire spectacle you've created, it reflects poorly on one person here, and it's not me. How dare you, Meghan said, her voice shaking with rage. How dare you stand there and judge me? You have no idea what it's like to be me. No idea what I've been through. You're right. I don't, Anderson acknowledged. But whatever you've been through doesn't give you the right to treat people the way you've treated me and my team tonight. We welcomed you here. We prepared for this interview in good faith, and you've thrown it all back in our faces. Good faith? Meghan grabbed her purse from beside the chair. There's been nothing good faith about this from the start. You wanted a spectacle, Anderson. Well, you got one. I hope you're happy. I'm not happy, Anderson said quietly. I'm disappointed. Disappointed that we couldn't have the conversation I hoped we'd have. Disappointed that you chose this path instead of actually engaging. And disappointed that you've wasted everyone's time, including your own. My time is never wasted when I'm standing up for myself, Meghan declared. When I'm refusing to be bullied by people like you. No one here has bullied you, Anderson said, his exhaustion with the situation evident in his voice. But I think it's clear that this interview is over. I'm going to ask you to leave. Oh, I'm leaving, Meghan said, already heading toward the exit. But not because you're asking me to, because I choose to, because I won't sit here and be disrespected any longer. The only person who's been disrespected here tonight is me, Anderson called after her. And frankly, I've had enough. Meghan turned back one last time at the edge of the stage. You know what, Anderson? This whole thing just proves my point. People like you can't handle strong women. Women who speak their minds. Women who refuse to be pushed around. This has nothing to do with you being a strong woman, Anderson replied, his voice weary. This has to do with you being unreasonably hostile to someone who was trying to give you a platform. There's a difference between being strong and being impossible to work with. Call it whatever you want, Meghan said. I know the truth. And so does everyone watching. Yes, Anderson agreed. They do know the truth. They've seen everything that happened here tonight. They can make their own judgments about who behaved appropriately and who didn't. Goodbye, Anderson, Meghan said coldly. I hope your ratings were worth it. Goodbye, Meghan, Anderson replied. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. And with that, Meghan walked off the stage, leaving Anderson standing there with the audience in stunned silence. He took a deep breath, straightened his jacket, and turned to face the camera. Well, he said, his voice remarkably steady considering what had just transpired. That didn't go as planned. We'll be right back after this break. The studio erupted in whispers as the cameras cut. The production assistants scrambled. The audience members looked at each other in disbelief. Nobody could quite process what they had just witnessed. Anderson sat back down in his chair, running a hand through his hair. A producer rushed over to check on him, but he waved them away gently. He'd been doing this job for 3 decades. He'd handled difficult guests before. But this was something entirely different. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. What had started as a simple interview about charity work and life. Experiences had devolved into a personal attack fest that served no one. Anderson had tried, repeatedly, to steer the conversation back to productive territory, but Meghan had been determined to create conflict. Backstage, Meghan was already on her phone. Her team gathered around her, looking concerned and confused. Back in the studio, Anderson composed himself. He'd been in journalism long enough to know that this moment would be replayed and analyzed endlessly. But he also knew that he'd handled it as well as he could have. He'd been patient. He'd been professional. He'd given Meghan every opportunity to course correct. And when it became clear that she had no intention of doing so, he'd ended it. Firmly, but respectfully. The audience was still buzzing as the break continued. Some were filming on their phones, despite the rules against it. Anderson's producer approached again. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. "I'm fine," Anderson replied. "That was intense." "That's putting it mildly," the producer said. "I've never seen anything like that." The floor director gave the signal. They were coming back from break. Anderson straightened in his chair, looking directly into the camera. "Welcome back," he said to the viewers at home. "As you just witnessed, our interview with Meghan Markle ended rather abruptly. These things happen in live television. Not every conversation goes the way we hope it will." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "In my 3 decades in this business, I've learned that the best interviews happen when both parties come to the table in good faith, ready to engage honestly and respectfully. Tonight, despite our best efforts, that didn't happen." It was a masterclass in professionalism. Anderson didn't throw Meghan under the bus. He didn't make excuses. He simply acknowledged what happened and moved forward. "We have a great show still ahead," he continued. "After the break, we'll be joined by a scientist who's made a breakthrough in cancer research. Stay with us." As the cameras cut again for commercial, Anderson finally allowed himself to relax slightly. His shoulders dropped. He took a long drink of water. The worst was over. The rest of the show continued as planned. Anderson interviewed the cancer researcher with his usual grace and insight. He did a segment on climate change. He closed with his traditional final thoughts. To anyone who tuned in late, it would seem like a normal episode. But those who had witnessed the Meghan segment knew they'd seen something extraordinary. As the show wrapped and the credits rolled, Anderson thanked his crew. They'd handled the chaos beautifully, keeping cameras rolling and maintaining professionalism. The interview that was supposed to last 30 minutes had barely made it to 15. Those 15 minutes, though, would be replayed and discussed for weeks to come. For Anderson, it was a reminder that no matter how experienced you are, live television can surprise you. You control your behavior, but never another person. All you can do is remain professional and handle whatever comes with grace.